In this video, we'll break down the NFL Week 3 main slate on DraftKings and FanDuel as we prepare full cash lineups. Unfortunately, injuries continue to be a factor in the NFL. We'll see if we can take advantage of some of them coming up next. Hello, everyone. I'm Eric Lee.
And I'm Michael Wiley, and we're the Fantasy Football Consultants. Eric, the weather's starting to cool down, so I got a little plug for my local team here that I support. But the NFL is heating up, isn't it?
You're being modest again, Michael. It's not just that you support them. You actually work for a college football. Want to tell our audience briefly about it?
Sure, yeah. So I've been involved in coaching high school football for a little bit now, and after moving my family to Southern Utah, got involved with the football program at Utah Tech, which is now a Division I program on its way to hopefully becoming more meaningful, although this transfer portal is tough to colleges. So I mentor the wideouts and play a little bit of role in some of the video screening. But Eric, enough about me. Let's talk a little bit about all the buzz that you're getting on the web. You're stirring up the controversy. What tell us a little bit about some of these blind reviews that you're doing.
Those blind rankings I'm doing. Last week, I put out the first blind ranking all-time quarterbacks. And my gosh, I'm happy that we got over 10,000 views, but people are passionate about this. You got to check it out. I'll put the link up above to check out that video. But yes, I love hearing from people, Michael, because it's funny. I'm not going to say where I put Drew Brees, but I had some people say, I can't believe you put Drew Brees that high. And then below it went, I can't believe you put Drew Brees that low. So I'm getting criticized from all corners, but it's all in good fun. And I think it's great. And then later this week, I do all-time running backs, best running backs. And then the following week, all-time best wide receivers. So I know it's going to create some controversy, but that's what makes it fun. So you guys got to check it out. Speaking of controversy, let's put some controversy in preparing our full cash lineup on DraftKings and FanDuel for Week 3. We always start with our core players. These are the players that we like their pricing for on FanDuel and DraftKings and are a part of both cash lineups. We have 5 players that are core players this week. I'll start it off with Jordan Mason, an absurdly low $6,200 on DraftKings and $8,300 on FanDuel. Guys, we know he is the replacement for Christian McCaffrey, but he is doing some Christian McCaffrey-like things. In the first 2 weeks of the year, he's had 29 and 21 touches. Now, admittedly, those touches went down because of game script. Reason Mason doesn't get heavily involved in the passing game, and the Niners were actually playing from behind on a lot of that game against Minnesota. But this week, they're playing the Rams, who don't have either of the top 2 wide receivers. So from a game script perspective, I expect San Francisco to be ahead and lean on Jordan Mason, especially since Deebo Samuels is also out, who is someone who would get critical, not just attention in the passing game, but we get critical carries, often sometimes around the goal line. Strong implied total of 25. I like this. Mason this week.
Yeah, nothing to add there. I can't believe the pricing is where it is. What you want with your running backs is touches, and he is getting those. Well, I'm going to take advantage of a similar situation, an injury. I know it's affecting your fantasy team's lineup. That's the injury to A.J. Brown of the Philadelphia Eagles, and get Devonta Smith in the lineup. He's 6,900 on DraftKings and 8,000 on FanDuel. I think if you saw that game against Atlanta, he was certainly the number 1 receiver for Jalen Hurts. He's got 10 and 8 targets in his first 2 games this season. That 10 targets was with A.J. Brown in the lineup. Hey, he's a special talent. Heisman Trophy Award winning talent, and Jalen Hurts knows it. He gets open, he catches the ball. He could have had a second touchdown at the end of that last game. Got to get him in the lineup at this price.
I like it. And the third player is Brandon Ayuk at $6,200 on DraftKings and $6,500 on FanDuel. Look, he's been quiet this year, which is why we're getting him at these prices. But let me tell you about all the targets on San Francisco that's freed up with Christian McCaffrey being out and Deebo Samuel. So I want to take advantage of that. So I already talked about the Rams' problems on offense with their passing game. So I think that the Niners are going to put points on the board in this game. And it's really hard not to imagine Ayuk not being a big part of it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. We've already talked about that game, so I'm gonna look at taking advantage similarly of a really porous defense, and that is the defense of the Carolina Panthers. You might say with tight end Brock Bowers of the Raiders, you might say, well, come on, Carolina has got one of the worst rushing defenses in the league. Don't you want to pick on them on the run? Well, they actually have one of the worst passing defenses in the league as well. They are just easy to move the ball on. And if you've been watching these Raiders games the last couple of games, they are relying heavily on Brock Bowers, 9 and 8 targets in his first 2 games. So at a price target of, sorry, I didn't put this in, but price is at 5,400 on DraftKings and 6,300 on FanDuel. I think a pretty good bargain for what you can get in terms of not only receptions, but also yards and potential getting in. Going to be the first touchdown, I think, this week for Brock Bowers in the end zone.
A lot of disappointment in fantasy at tight end this year between Sam Laporta, Travis Kelce, Dalton Kincaid, Evan Ingram. But Powers have been outstanding, and he's the real deal, and the Raiders know it. So I love this, and they've yet to really up his price that much. So I like it. The last player, yes, I can talk about somebody who's not a San Francisco 49er. It was hard. I'm a Seahawks fan here. The last player is Tony Pollard at $6,000 on DraftKings and $6,800 on FanDuel. The news is in. The winner of the running back derby in Tennessee is clearly Tony Pollard. He has outpaced Tajay Spears, getting 19 and 22 touches in the first 2 weeks. And on top of that, this week, Spears is injured. He's questionable with an ankle injury. Not sure if he's even going to play, but even if he does, this is predominantly Pollard's backfield and in a relatively good environment as a home favorite. Applied total's a little low because it's Tennessee of 20, but I like the fact that he's facing a Green Bay defense that it's early in the season, but 27th ranked against running backs. So let's dial up Pollard at a very reasonable price.
No, I like it. I think that's a great core of players. Let's go in and talk about what we want to do on DraftKings.
Sounds good. But before we do, let me remind everybody that we want to hear from you. So smash that like button, share your comments in the comment section, and smash the red subscribe button.
Okay, Eric, here we are on DraftKings. We have $19,300 remaining, so a little over $4,800 per player. We're going to save some money on defense so we can spend a little bit here, but we got to keep it inexpensive. And I'm going to go ahead and keep it inexpensive without sacrificing on targets here in the wide receiver position. We're going to start with Rashid Shaheed for the New Orleans Saints at $5,300, going up against the Philadelphia Eagles, who, yeah, they're a stronger defense, but haven't been so strong against the pass, as you saw towards the end of that Atlanta game on Monday night. There is, a little bit of value in this game for him, and he is really been kind of the number one guy in terms of yards per attempt. Look at, he's been a little over 20 yards per target in receiving. And let's face it, Derek Carr right now is on his game and is a big benefit to Rashid Shaheed, who's been in the end zone in each of the games that he's played. And so I'm kind of surprised that we can get him at $5,300. I know Olave, some say, is the number one, but I think Shaheed's the deep threat and he's still getting, lots of targets. So I like this price tag. Save some money for us for making sure that we can get quality position folks at the other position as well.
Oh, you're being kind though, Michael. Lots of targets, 4 and 5, but and I do think Olave is the number one. However, and I would say Shaheed is traditionally a better GPP play because he's such a home run threat, but the price is too low at $5,300, and Carr is playing too well, as you pointed out. So I like this pick here at $5,300. Still trying to be reasonable in spending money here. I'm going to go at $5,600 and pick up Geno Smith. Geno Smith is playing at home. He is a favorite by 6.5 points and a reasonably good implied total of 23. And as a Seahawks fan, I can attest the Seattle Seahawks run game is much less effective with Zach Charbonnet. When Ken Walker III is out, and it looks like he will be out again in week 3, the Seahawks have to rely more on the pass like they did in week 2. And they have the weapons. They have DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Jackson Smith-Njigba. They even have Noah Fant at tight end. And the final thing I'll say about Geno Smith is he helps his floor because when he is scrambling, he will take off and run. They don't do any design runs with Geno Smith, but helps his floor to know he's going to get 4 or 5 carries.
Yeah, no, I like it. Saving some dollars there. We had to, obviously, with what we have started with. But because of where we're going to go on the defense side, we have a little bit of money here. Not as much as we might like, but let's get somebody who does get lots of targets, and in a really, I guess, a game that's expected to be high scoring. 26 implied total for the Detroit Lions. Jameson Williams at $5,800 going up against Arizona Cardinals. This is going to be, I think, a high scoring game. I think we're going to see a lot of yards. I know that Detroit didn't put a lot of points on the board, but they did have a lot of yards. And you might say, okay, yeah, we knew with the 11 targets that Williams got in week 1 that Amon-Ra St. Brown was getting shortchanged. So Williams isn't going to get the same amount of targets, right? Because Amon-Ra St. Brown got his targets. Well, he did. But Jameson Williams still had 9 targets this last week. He's also home run threat and can get in the end zone like he did this last week. So a lot of upside. Kind of surprised that this is the price tag for him, $5,800. I think he's established himself as maybe the best number 2 or one of the top number 2 receivers in the league.
And Amon-Ra St. Brown is questionable, I believe, for this game. So A, will he play at all? And B, if he does, will he be hampered? So Williams is great to have in our lineup. We only have one more position to fill, and that is defense. And we've got a couple of options here. I'm really surprised at 2,600 that we can get the Chicago Bears. Let's just take a step back. The Chicago Bears is actually a really good defense. They ended the second half of the last year allowing the least number of points or second least number of points in all the NFL. And they've started off this year right there. Where their offense has sputtered, their defense has more than picked up the slack. They put pressure on the quarterback, and they are not like in a situation where they're huge underdogs. They're a 1-point dog at Indianapolis. And Anthony Richardson, I want to say he's a rookie because he's only played like 6 games in the NFL, and he can make mistakes and some ill-advised throws or takeoff running. So I think there's opportunities here for the Bear defense at a reasonable price.
Yeah, no, I agree. And if the Chicago Bears offense can start to figure a few things out, which hopefully they can figure out a little more this week, they can be a much more formidable defense. They were very strong against a pretty good offense in Houston. So I like this pick. I like this lineup. Let's put it in.
All right. So that is our cash lineup for DraftKings. We'll move on to FanDuel.
Okay, Eric, here we are in FanDuel. We have almost 31,000 available to us, so $6,180 per player. So let's make sure we round out this wide receiver core with someone who has some real upside and a high floor as well. And so we're going to go with Chris Godwin going up against a very poor Denver defense. Godwin is $6,500 if I got my pricing right. And sometimes I don't do that well with my out my glasses on. 6,600. Sorry, he was 6,500 on FanDuel.
Inflation, Michael. Inflation in our society.
Yeah, exactly. Inflation. Again, a very poor defense in Denver, and Baker Mayfield has been playing well and been very efficient. Not only do you have 8 targets per game for Chris Godwin, but he's got a catch in all but one of those. Putting yards with that and getting in the end zone. If you watch Chris Godwin the last couple of years, it was kind of disappointing 2 years ago for fantasy owners and really towards the beginning of last year, but started to have a nice chemistry with Baker Mayfield. I think he's really Baker's number one guy. Baker still likes to go to Evans for the big play sometimes and get him in the end zone, but Chris Godwin's getting in the end zone this year, going up against this weak Denver defense. I'm kind of surprised on FanDuel we can get Godwin for $6,600. So I think we get him in there.
And I like it because of the price that it lets me go wacky at quarterback and spend a ton of money. At 8,500, let's get Jalen Hurts in the lineup. Michael, I know other thing to say that admit right off the bat that it hurts not to have AJ Brown. Okay, let's just absolutely admit that. But it means that Hurts is even that much more important. So I think his passing yards are going to likely go down. But just look at the game log and see the floor that he brings with his rushing. I mean, 13 times each that he has run the ball. But I don't care about the total carries, Michael, as much as I care about the fact that the tush push is alive and well. There was a lot of question in the offseason with Jason Kelsey retiring. Will they still use the tush push, especially since they had a change in offensive coordinator? Absolutely, they will if they need anywhere from a yard and a half or less, which means if they're anywhere near the goal line within that yard and a half, it's not going to be Saquon Barkley. It's going to be Jalen Hurts, and you're going to get a free 6 points out of it. So I love that as a particular floor. And we're actually going to do something we don't always do in our cash lineup. We're going to actually have a stack as we have Hurts to Devonta Smith. And the reason I like that stack this week, even though it's a cash game, who else is he going to throw to? So, and I like both guys' price given what I think is going to happen in this game.
Yeah, no, completely agree. I think like you say, it looked a little bit dicey in that first game and in the offseason, but, firmly established. Disappointing loss for the Eagles this last week. They're going to need to come out strong against a very good New Orleans defense, and Jalen Hurts is going to be a big part of that. You and I have talked about Kyler Murray at a very similar price in that high-scoring potential game against Detroit as also a good option. Someone else who uses his leg. So, hey, pick your poison. Who do you like better? If you want to avoid that stack, go ahead and go with Kyler Murray. So at the running back position, we have some money left here because we all know what we're going to do with the defensive spot. But we can't get, the highest price guys, unfortunately, because we're average at $5,200 remaining. So I'm going to go with someone who, might feel a little bit controversial because he hasn't done much yet. For those of you who own Zamir White, he's down here at $6,000, which I feel like is a bargain because of his matchup. And because of what I think the Raiders need to do this week, which is establish the run. Yes, against the very worst defense in the league, against the Carolina Panthers. I think this is going to be the game script. Hey, Antonio Pierce, I know hasn't been able to rely on the run the last couple of games, but that is in his DNA. That is how he wants to approach this. Kind of want to ignore what's happened thus far this season, and look at the talent that Zamir White is. Yes, gets involved in the passing game, and he's the goal line back. So, okay, Madison stole a couple of touchdowns from him, but it wasn't because of the run game. It wasn't because of, pounding the ball into the end zone at the end. The Raiders weren't able to do that yet. This week, they're going to be able to do that.
Yeah, Alexander Madison is going to be in the game when they're in passing situations and when they're behind. And I know that the Raiders upset the Ravens, but they were behind in most of that game, and they were behind in the entire game against the LA Chargers. So the Raiders are, I think, 7-point favorites this week. So you would think playing at home against what many people believe is the worst team in the NFL, the Carolina Panthers, that they're up, that they get up on them, and then I think this is more of a Zamir White game.
So Eric, I left you some money. I was wrong on the dollar amount there. I'd forgotten that we didn't have Pollard in the lineup. So we actually are out of funds here. You have
all right. Well, just show me all the different choices I get for defense. I want to see what are my options.
I'm trying to scroll down. It won't let me scroll down anymore.
How am I going to sell this to the people? I just been saying Carolina was the worst team in the NFL, and you kept saying how bad their defense was when picking this. So here's how I sell it, folks. It is a punt defense. It is a defense that is acknowledgement of the fact that there's volatility with fantasy defense, and we're going to look elsewhere. Again, you don't like it, you certainly can make adjustments to our roster. I will remind you guys that this is not a GPP lineup. It is okay for cash to have a running back going against your defense. We're just looking for a high floor here, and we're punting the defense. So a little goes against what we were saying from a game script, but I actually think that Carolina should at least put up a little bit of a fight this game with the change from Bryce Young to Andy Dalton. And because of that change, I think from a game script perspective, this defense shouldn't be, always on their heels and playing from way, way behind.
Yeah, and let's face it, Gardner Minshew has had a history of turning the ball over in his career, and so you're kind of relying on that as well. Hey, if we save that extra $200 at the quarterback position, you can go up to, I would say, actually go with Atlanta against Kansas City instead of Denver against Tampa Bay, with how Denver's defenses look this year. But I'm not sure I feel that much better about Atlanta than Carolina. So I think it's up to you.
So I just would like to comment, and looking at this total team, and feel free to scroll up so Carolina doesn't show.
Nice.
But scroll a little down so we can see our flex person. But we're not seeing what you would see as traditional stars in this lineup. A lot of times we have stars and scrubs, and but I think that other than the defense, that we got everybody who's capable, and a lot of people are benefiting from injuries and a lot of good high-scoring games. I think that San Francisco and Ram game is going to be high-scoring. I think that Philadelphia and New Orleans game is going to be high-scoring.
Yeah, no, I mean, you look at the core that we have in here, including the quarterback position all the way down here. Every one of these guys could be towards the top of performers this week, and we have a nice high floor to go with that.
And for the second week in a row, we have our defense going up against two players, I just realized, because we also have Brock Bowers. But again, if that bothers you folks, just pivot. All right, everybody. Thanks so much again for watching us. We really appreciate your support. Don't forget to put in your opinion, who you like the most on the main slate for DraftKings or FanDuel, given their price. And until next week, take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
We're going to put up 2 videos we think you'll enjoy.